Hey folks, in today's video I'll be sharing with you a handy phrase that I like to use and keep in mind as I'm doing my Game Master prep. So the phrase that I'm going to be talking about today is if then. This is a phrase and kind of a planning method that I find really useful for planning a homebrew, or you could probably also apply it to writing a module. And that's coming up with kind of a lot of if-then statements. So what I mean by this is an example from the homebrew game that I ran. I had a very big if-then, kind of two different options of if the party stops the ritual or if the party fixes the ritual and reinstates the ritual. I didn't necessarily go into the specifics of how exactly my party would go about doing that, more so what the outcome would be from whatever the choice they made. And I think that this is very helpful because if you're trying to plan for every possible solution to the problems that you're presenting your players with to try and solve, you're never going to be able to come up with every possible solution. And probably the solution that you don't think of is the one that your players are going to come up with. And you're going to be like, well, if you plan too specifically for those solutions, you're going to be in trouble. Whereas if you keep it broader and focus more on what the outcome is, so if you're having, okay, your party needs to get from point A to point B. If they travel by land, if they travel by sea, having those kind of broad things. If they succeed, if they fail, that broad level. So then you're not planning for the specific solutions, but you're planning for the outcome. This is also going to help with your planning because you're going to spend a lot less time planning for those specific scenarios and can just kind of plan on a broader level. Now, I will say with NPCs, I do like to kind of plan things a little bit more specifically, and that I think is easier to do because you have an NPC, you have a more controlled aspect of it, and so I will oftentimes kind of think through, okay, if the players are nice to the NPC, this is how they will react. If they are mean to the NPC, this is how they'll react. I kind of think through of what it is that the NPC wants from the party, what it is that they're looking for, and then kind of figure out, okay, well, however the party ends up interacting with them, here are a few different scenarios that can kind of lead to progressing the plot along, whether it's the main plot or a nice little subplot that we get to go on. So this can get a bit more specific, but it still is following that kind of if-then guideline. And ultimately, I think a good way to kind of picture it is planning out your kind of sessions and stuff like that in a flowchart, rather than a linear path. So if this happens, you've got like option A, option B, potentially C, D, and that those get to lead to different things. And also with the flowchart, you can oftentimes kind of backtrack to things. So even if your party, they didn't take this adventuring hook early on, but you really want to go back and, play out that scenario, you can present that option to them later. And I will also say the thens might all lead to the same thing. I kind of talked about this in the plot armor video. You can go check that out up there. But yeah, it still makes it feel like the players are having an impact, that their actions are driving the story rather than they're sitting, in the passenger seat along for the ride. And I like to think of games, when I'm a game master, as I'm creating more of a choose your own adventure book rather than a novel. And I think this also gets into something that I might go into a little bit more detail in a future video, but making sure that my players feel like they have agency. What I mean by this is that they have ownership of the story, and also that their characters' actions affect the plot, affect the story, that it's not just their as I said earlier, passengers in the car, but that they are really driving things forward. And I think when you make sure that your players feel like they have agency, they're going to be a lot more engaged than if they're just kind of more passively there for the story and feel like no matter what, oh, we're always going to succeed. But if you set up these if-then scenarios, you can have maybe different levels of success and potentially kind of, okay, well, they failed, but find a way to bring it back around so they do succeed, so you can keep moving the plot ahead if their success is vital to moving the plot forward. So yeah, it's kind of a very broad, simple thing, but I do find that just keeping that in my head helps me as I'm moving forward. And then I also use it at the table when new things come up. I just kind of think of, especially with NPCs, okay, if this happens, what is their reaction going to be? Okay, you know, for broader plot things, if my party decides not to go after this plot hook, then what am I going to do? Then what happens? And it might be I reintroduce the plot hook with a different NPC or a different method. Or it could be, okay, we can go off and do like a fun little hunting quest or one-shot type thing and maybe revisit this quest at a later date or find a new route to go. Yeah, just kind of something, just a little phrase maybe to keep in your tool set that might help spark your game prep. So are there any phrases that you kind of keep in mind as you're prepping your session? Anything like the if-then? I'd love to know about it down in the comments below.
A big thanks to our patrons, especially Arvi. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure that you're subscribed because we make videos here every week, and then you don't have to like be watching for them or anything. Also, you can follow us on our social media. We post about our videos there, as well as some of the other fun stuff that we're up to. All right, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye. All the noise is happening outside. Oh well, you do what you do.